Hello and welcome to episode 336 of the Hooniverse podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Glucker. Today we've got a special guest. Everyone say hello to actor, car lover, all-around wonderful person, Daniel Cudmore.
Hello, hello.
How's it going, buddy?
Good, brother. How you doing?
I'm good. You've been on this podcast before, and I had to look it up. It was November of 2014.
Oh, my God. It's so long ago.
That was episode 84. I had to go back and count just because they're not numbered for some reason in the way we have them. So what's changed in the last 8 years?
Oh, my gosh. In the last 8 years, I've had 2 kids. I've moved back to Canada. Man, a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm still doing the same thing. I'm still working in film and TV, but life is 180 different compared to 2014, where I didn't have a care in the world except for myself. Now I'm basically at the beckoning call of 2 little kiddos who never give me a chance to sleep, but I asked for it, and it's amazing.
Yes. My daughter will be 7 this year, so
Right.
she wasn't born then either.
Yeah. So a lot's changed for you as well.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Went from an apartment to a condo to a house. Changed some cars in the last 8 years.
Weird.
Yeah. That's crazy.
I'm in the same boat. How many cars have I had in the last 8 years? It's got to be over 5 or 6.
Because, I mean, you've had multiple SQ5s, right?
No, I only had one.
Okay.
I was gonna get the new iteration with the turbo V6. I couldn't get around the exhaust pipes being fake out the back.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. I said, the guy's like, well, your other SQ5's in great shape. We'll give you great money for it, and we'll turn it into your lease payments will be the same. And I just turned around and I walked into the back of the car and I just smacked the fake plastic pieces. And I said, you change this, and we got a deal.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to go buy an ABT kit or anything like that. I was just like, I wasn't interested. I liked the SQ5 with the supercharger that I had.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that car too is I think when I drove the revised version of it was on, what is it called? It's Vancouver Island.
Yep.
That's where they launched it. So, pseudo your neck of the woods, right?
Yeah, just an hour ferry ride away from us. But they're great cars. Like, I mean, for me, needing a sort of Swiss Army knife, I wish we had better versions of wagons. That's what I would.
Right.
I would have been driving, an S4 wagon or Avant, but that's not possible. So the closest thing was getting an SQ5 and lowering it and kind of going that route.
What do you have now?
I got an F-150 now.
You leave the U.S. and you go full U.S.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I left the U.S. I got rid of the SQ5 because we needed a bigger SUV for my wife because I'm not normal size. So anytime I sit in the front seat and there's a car seat behind me,
right,
it's just the space disappears. So we got an Atlas for my wife, which is right there.
Nice.
And then for some silly reason, I got hooked on the Colorado ZR2.
Sure.
I was like, I want it. It's cool. I don't want to spend $100,000 on a Raptor. This thing's great. It's got a little diesel. And then I drove it for a year. And I drove it for a year and a half. And I got so sick and tired of basically flashlight headlights. Like, the headlights are so poor. It's like there's a really poor quality flashlight on the headlight. And just the lack of amenities. I mean, driving characteristics were great. Thing handled. Yeah. Those Multimatic shocks, fantastic. But that was about as far as it went. Yeah. And the diesel was great. Like, you could go all crazy and you could tune it and all that stuff, but I wasn't interested in losing warranty. But I started driving it, and going from a SQ5 interior comfort and quality to driving a Colorado ZR2, I was like, the headrest didn't even go up high enough for my head. I'm like, the seats were so uncomfortable. The plastics were horrendous. And anyway, long story boring.
GM.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was, unfortunately, you're right. And then I got rid of that. And then I got an S4 again. And then that, I was holding on to the fact that I'm, thinking I'm shorter than I really am because I had no room. I had no room.
And
And then
for those listening, how tall are you?
I'm 6'6".
Right.
So the S4 was so, I mean, I was right on the edge, right?
Yeah.
I could feel my hair brushing the roof if I sat too vertical in the seat. It just got to a point where I'm like, I love this car's great. I didn't like the lack of driver input. I felt like the car did everything for you and you just kind of sat there and went along for the ride.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
then I got an F-150 and I'm like, I'm kicking myself for the gas prices. I'm like, oh, I should have kept the diesel.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I have a ZR2 out front right now, but it's the Silverado, which you can't
Yes.
get with a diesel. But it
Which
does.
is
Yeah.
which
6.2
is
is
like,
fun though.
6.2 is fantastic, but like, the worst part about 6.2 is like all you want to do is just mash on it.
Yes, that's correct.
And right now, I
Yeah.
mean, what are you guys a gallon right now?
Let's see. I think the last time I filled up, because I put premium in my own vehicles, because our premium, was only 91, so I want to get the best I can. My most expensive fill up was $6.79 a gallon.
6.79.
Yeah.
So we're more expensive up here,
Okay.
right? Because we're 220 something per liter. There's 3.7 something liters in a gallon. So we're a little bit more expensive.
Okay.
But like it's bananas. So like my truck's 132 liter tank. It's just like I'm like, come on. And there's even some gas stations that hold like a $250 limit. So you literally have to fill up and then click it and then redo a whole nother credit card transaction. It's just like,
Yeah, no, that's crazy. Down here, a lot of them will
do?
be $100 limit,
right,
which, you hit that very easily. And
right.
thankfully and not thankfully, I found one that doesn't have it. So in my Montero, I had a $140 fill up,
Yep.
which was impressive because
Yep.
that has a bigger fuel tank than people think. And then thankfully the Jag tanks, because it's 2 tanks, they're not that big, but it's still ridiculous. I think each one is like 10 gallons or so.
I love the fact that the Jag has 2 tanks.
Me too.
Isn't that great?
Yes, it is.
Well, let me just fill up on the other side.
Well, and the car kind of, it's not a boat tail, but the rear end of it kind of, comes together a little bit. So it doesn't matter what side I park on because the hose reaches the other side, which is nice.
Right.
And I think I may have mentioned this on the podcast before, but I'm going to say it again because it has the V8 swap. And then my license plate is 2 inline 4s, just as a joke about the V8. And I was filling up one night, and somebody saw the 2 gas tanks, and they looked at the plate, and they looked at me, and they had a quizzical look, and they were like, "Does that car have 2 engines?" And I was like, "What?" And then I kind of put it together. I'm like, "All right, maybe that's not a dumb question because of the plate." And I was like, "Oh no, it's just I'm being stupid and blah blah blah." So, but yeah.
But here's to be honest with me, how hard was it for you not to clap back with something really smart ass?
Well, what I should have just said is yes, and then left it at that and drove away. Yes.
You probably could have gone around the block 3 times and come back, and the guy still would have been just standing there looking off in the distance, wondering, how is it that he has 2 motors in that thing?
Yeah.
I'm so confused.
One of these days, one night, just for like a good Instagram photo, I want to back into a fueling station and fill up with 2 pumps at the same time.
At the same time?
Yeah. I saw a photo of that once. I'm like, I got to recreate that. But I'd only want to do it at like midnight so nobody else needs I don't want to take up spots.
You don't want to be that guy.
I hate people who don't pull ahead. It's like, how is that not just basic knowledge?
It's just common sense.
Right. It's like
there's a million different things you could do a podcast for a year on things that people do with cars that just don't make sense.
You can extend it to like car related things if you count parking lots, because there's that famous or infamous, they call it the shopping cart or the trolley, depending on where you are, the test. Do you put away your cart or not? And it shows if you do, you're a good person. And if you don't, you're not a good person.
Yes. And it blows me. It just blows my mind sometimes about how close one individual can be to the area where the cart goes back.
Oh.
And the worst part is when you see someone double take, like, no, my time's more important than 2 seconds that it takes to put that over there.
It's such the world only revolves around you syndrome, and it's wild because somebody else is going to need to use that spot, and you've blocked it.
Yep.
And you've just, it's a 2-second thing that can make everybody's day easier. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
It's crazy.
Costco's notorious for
I
that.
bet. All right, let's move on to some real questions for you. I've written down.
No,
Yeah, yeah. So,
that seems foolish.
Cudmore. No, I'm not going to do like the bullshit.
Excuse
Yeah.
me. So,
I have a general question because this ties into a conversation you and I had. What was it, a month or two ago? What is
yeah.
life like for the taller car enthusiast? And before you answer that, I forget, are you the tallest, or is like your dad taller? Like someone's taller?
No, we're all about the same. I mean, my younger brother and I are similar height. My older brother maybe shorter by about 2 inches, and then my dad's about 6'2".
Okay.
Um, it. I've always grown up with champagne taste on a beer budget, so I think certain cars. I'm not Tom Cruise crossing $1 billion in earnings in my career,
Top Gun was
so I
so
don't
good.
exactly. What's
The movie
that?
was
Top
so good.
Guy. I know, I heard, but he like, he's that's the only one Tom Cruise. Um, so I don't think that, a lot of the choices, it's not like I'm really hindered. It's not like I'm going to be like, oh, I can't go get that Lotus and I can't go get that Ferrari.
Sure.
It's because of my height. But that being said, there are just simple vehicles that you would think work and then don't, like at one point I wanted to get I think I was looking at the Range Rover Sport. This was before I had kids, and I just thought blowing money was smart.
Mhm.
And I went and sat in, and I couldn't fit.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is a big SUV. How does this not function for someone my size? But it just the way that they're built, whether vehicles, even on trucks, some body on frame trucks, and if they have a sunroof, a lot of the GM products with
Yeah.
sunroof, I don't fit. Even if the seat goes right down to the ground.
Yep.
So that kind of makes this world of like, what am I going to get? What am I going to get? And then you chalk in, hey, are you start a family, you got kids in the back, or they're rear-facing car seats, and now you got to buy big, humongous, SUVs masquerading as a minivan
Yeah.
just to fit the kids in,
Yeah.
right? And you're like, oh man, so it changes things. It definitely makes you sort of that window of things you want to be able to buy kind of just tighten and tighten and
Yep.
tighten.
Yeah. My
And I don't know, and I've got a weird obsession with small cars for some reason. I think it.
small cars are
So I
fun.
like driving small little, like I had a GTI. I fit in GTIs. Figure that
The
one out. I
Germans,
can't fit
man.
in a.
The
Yeah.
Germans typically, well, they're a larger group of people, you know, compared to the Brits apparently with the Land Rover.
Right.
But yeah, usually like even like Mark One Golfs are just they're fine. There's room in German cars, and they get it
Hmm.
for taller people, which is always something I find kind of interesting. And I'm not tall as you. I'm not short. I'm
Yeah.
6'3", but and I don't know what it is about my because sometimes people the same height as me or even an inch or two shorter say, I can't fit comfortably in a Miata.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about
Right.
my body. I mean, I can drive NA through ND and I fit. So
Right. And then you also got. I mean, you got to also look at your height. Like when you say that, how much are you leg versus how much are you torso?
right, right,
So if you're 50-50, you can kind of get away with some things.
right.
If you're, Captain Torso and you've got the shortest legs, but you're, like I think there was a famous quote that so Michael Phelps, Olympic swimmer, he's 6'5",
Yeah,
6'6". He's tall, but he has a 32-inch inseam.
right. And his wingspan is
Like,
crazy.
yeah, he's got unbelievably long arms, a super long torso, and really short
Huh.
legs.
So okay, so he
So
generates crazy power with his legs, and then the
yeah,
arms are
because he
just like
doesn't have such long levers, and then his arms are just so long, so he's like perfectly built for
right.
swimming. I mean, he's got crazy determination and discipline, but apart from it, so yeah, buying vehicles is strange, and like even you said, like when being at 6'3", some things work and some things
Right.
don't. It's a weird it's a weird thing because even Japanese cars for me, like a lot of Subarus, I've had a lot of Subaru STIs and things like that, and they fit
Hmm.
great, tons of room.
That could be like the official. If there was like a car flag of BC, a Subaru has to be way high on the list.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
way up there. Everyone likes to sort of, Subarus sort of claim their whole thing is like we're different. Like we're not going to go to the status quo. We're not going to kind of go along with everyone else. We're just different. We like it out here, and it's a very sort of BC, Oregon, Washington, kind of Northern California. It's that sort of thing. And the funny thing is, it attracts those people, even those people that have lots of money, but they don't like showing it. They could be worth millions. And they're like, Oh, I've had my Outback for like 6 years and I love it. I'm never
That's funny that
changing
you
it.
say that because we were just back east visiting family, but on the tail end of the trip, we popped down to Virginia because my wife has a friend from she did a semester at sea one year of college, and she made
Yep.
a lifelong friend there.
Hopefully it wasn't on the Sea Org.
No, it was I forget what it was through, but it was I mean it's based out of the
Right.
University of Pittsburgh or something like that. Like that's who
Okay.
runs Semester at Sea for some reason. Um,
Yep.
but she was it was all through Mediterranean, Europe, Northern Africa. It was really
Oh,
cool.
tough
Yeah.
place. Tough place to go to school.
She did it during the summer. I applied for it too. My mom told me I didn't get accepted. The truth is I did. We just couldn't afford it. But it
Oh,
was good that she went off
uh,
and did it. She's my wife. This was in
yeah.
college when we were just boyfriend girlfriend. She went and did that, and
Right.
I spent the summer in California with a buddy. So I mean that was good too.
Right.
But one of the friends she made on that trip, they live in D.C. They just bought a house, built a house on the river in Virginia, like an hour and a half outside the
Yep.
city. The guy is worth a lot. He comes from a very wealthy family, and he drives
Sure.
an Outback. So I mean, you're
Right.
spot on.
Yeah.
Because he's like I'm not a car guy. But I'm screwed because my son is growing up to be a car guy. I'm like, well, when he's older, send him my way. And he's like, yeah, if he wants to build an old Chevy starting at 14 so he can learn to do it himself, he's like, I'll fund him to do it. He's like, but I won't be able to help him. It's like, oh yeah, yeah.
Right. Right.
But yeah,
But it is. It's true. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that around here. And a lot of people that work in tech, for some reason, sort of gravitate towards. I think it's just like you said. Some people who are car people will gravitate to certain cars. Right. It's just natural. You love the mechanical work, the
mhm,
artistry. You love the body lines and everything like that. If you're not somebody who enjoys cars, you just want it to work. Like you want it to be so
right,
functional, A to B to C, and we're good. And I think the thing about Subarus, especially if you've got, weather that can kind of change and turn on a dime, and you got snow, you got rain, they just
yeah,
work. They get the job done. And I've driven some hairy roads in my STIs with like a foot and a half of snow, not
yeah.
plowed, creating my own path, having no idea where the road really is, and never having a
Oh,
problem, and being like, huh, okay, I get it. 300 horsepower, fun to drive, and I never get
oh
stuck.
yeah,
So,
yeah. And then I can picture him in my head in the Northwest, like mountain bikes on the roof for part of the year, snowboards for the other part of the year. Change the tires,
totally.
good to go.
Yeah. And everything right now is a whole cross track putting lift
Yeah,
kits
yeah, yeah.
and going that route because let's be honest, man, the truck world is not necessarily friendly at the pump. And so getting a little cross track with a bunch of
Yeah,
racks on it and lifting it and putting some off road tires, it can get you some pretty cool
absolutely.
places. And it's going to be a lot
Yeah,
cheaper.
yeah.
So,
No, I'm a fan of the Crosstrek and the modified Crosstrek as well. So
right.
what is the most comfortable car for you? I mean, it's big SUVs and trucks, right?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the most comfortable was my
Mm,
SQ5. It just worked. The interior was amazing. Like it just made sense. I didn't have it with the Apple CarPlay. I would have loved to have the Apple CarPlay because it was a 2014
okay.
edition. But like in terms of just functionality, space, speed when I wanted it, it wasn't. I was gonna go down the rabbit hole of pulleys and intake and
Wow.
tune and all that stuff, and then I was like, "What's the point? Like, it would have just gone. It would have gone
Yeah.
bananas, and I would have just been blowing through tires
Hmm.
and fuel. But it just worked. But now, like the F-150 fits great. Now I got with kids, like you can put kids in the back. It's cavernous
Yeah,
in the
it's
back
big.
seats, and then I've got the truck bed with the folding tonneau, and I can just fill it up
Oh,
with
nice.
stuff.
Okay, so you're good to go.
Um, Good to go. I wish I had waited and somehow got myself one with a diesel
Or
motor,
the
but
hybrid is actually pretty sweet too.
it's crazy cool. But our structure up here in terms of what you can get lease wise, they're not good. And if you start throwing the hybrid motor, which I think is an add on around like five and a half
Mhm.
thousand up here, if you're going to lease it, you're never going to see that money
Mm,
recouped in a
sure.
4 year lease. Is it just not unless you're doing insane amounts of
Yep.
kilometers a
Yep.
year.
That makes sense. Over the course of your career, have you had any roles where you've been able to incorporate a vehicle? Has that ever happened?
No, no. But I'm starting to kind of venture into the world of producing. That's a very interesting place for me, and especially with this sort of taking career a little bit more in hands, and creating opportunities as opposed to waiting around for someone else to make that choice and decision for it. And I'm definitely noticing that everything that I want to get made always seems to have a
Mm.
car in it. There's a project I have right now that centers around, it's a family based sort of action drama, but it sort of centers around the father son relationship that was sort of forged with fixing up a
Oh wow.
Shelby, and sort of all of these other things that start to kind of come up, and it's a sort of choice about whether or not how much can you take in a family in terms of bringing you down with them before you just walk away from the
Wow.
family. But I'm leaning towards it, I think, mostly right at the beginning because I saw there was a car in it. I'm like, well, here's an opportunity to do a really cool car chase that is all
Oh, cool.
practical.
Hell yeah. That's awesome.
Because I don't like CGI
Yeah.
car chases. I think they're silly. They serve their purpose and you understand them, but I love
Yeah,
practical
I
car
mean,
stuff. I
it makes
love,
sense in a movie like Free Guy, which is he's in a video
yeah,
game world.
totally,
Yeah, I get it,
totally,
and like Transformers, obviously, because they literally transform. But yeah,
yep,
I'm with like, but like the
yep,
stuff they do on Mission Impossible, where they're using car rigs and all that stuff is absolutely very cool for sure.
yeah. But I like
Yeah,
Ronin. I
yeah.
like, Baby Driver. I like things where it's you get some really skilled drivers in, and you can. I just feel it's cooler
The
that way.
I am an Edgar Wright fan, but I think the only part of that
Hmm.
movie I like is the intro chase. The rest of it just didn't
Right.
click for me.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I
Fair
love
enough.
Edgar Wright generally. I don't know. I like John
Yep.
Hamm. I like Jamie
I
Foxx.
yeah. I enjoyed it. But you're right. I mean, the intro car chasing was
Amazing, and
fantastic.
Subaru that they converted to rear drive. That's always
Yep.
good stuff.
Yep.
If you could put a vehicle into a role, you mentioned Shelby, but is there any vehicle you're like, oh man, if I could ever find a way to like pop one of these?
I don't know. That's a good one. That's a good question. It's hard to say. Um, I love Porsches. I've always loved Porsches. It'd be cool. I mean, if the budget was unlimited, it'd be
Yeah,
cool to get a singer and just like, play
that
with
would you'd
that.
have to like cut someone's fee. It'd be like when Jonah Hill did
100%.
Wall Street and took like whatever like his lowest scale is.
Which is the funniest thing in the world. Like I remember reading that. You say that because I read it a few months ago. Oh, he took
Yeah,
a pay cut to do a Scorsese film. Like like he was sacrificing
right.
all that much. I'm like, I would have worked for 5 grand on a
Yeah,
Scorsese film in a role of
yeah.
that scope. But yeah, of course, you would totally have to you totally have to hire someone and be like, so here's a caveat. You're not really going to get paid because we spent
Everybody's
it all
taking
on this
5%
car.
across the board, and Singer gets
Yeah,
Singer gets
you guys
points somehow.
yeah, somehow Singer gets points and makes an
Yeah.
even cooler car go around.
Um,
So yeah, something like that, something really neat, but or something very unassuming. Like I love vehicles that have been done up, but you can't tell
okay.
they've been done up. So, but something super ridiculous, like like an old
Oh,
station
sure, sure,
wagon
sure.
that's somehow been totally done up
Almost like
underneath, and make that
Dak
as a hero
Shepard has
car.
his Buick Roadmaster that I think is fully done up.
100%,
Yeah,
something like that, right? Yeah, he's got a kick-ass
he
car
does.
collection. I'm kind of, and they're very odd, which I appreciate. Like, not, I wouldn't say odd, but they're not sort of the status quo that
Yeah,
people are like,
yeah.
ooh,
No,
look
I
at
agree.
that. But car people are like,
Yep.
oh,
Yeah,
I see what
yes.
you did there. Like a Chevy
Right,
SS. That's
right.
cool.
No, you're right. It's not the standard Hollywood actor guy with money goes, blah blah blah, checks things off a box.
Yeah,
100%.
totally. Ooh, you got a Lambo truck.
Right.
Great. That's
Congrats.
cool. So does a lot of people and every
Right.
YouTuber out
Exactly.
there. You know what I mean? Like, not taking
Of
away from
course.
the truck is that Urus is amazing, but it's, even up here I see one now, and that's the problem with some of these supercars is you see them so often, and that sort of like show
Yeah.
off culture that I see them now, and I'm like,
Of
yeah,
course.
that's cool.
Especially in Vancouver. Vancouver is crazy.
Oh, 100%. We went to Father's Day at the Italian Culture Center, and it was all Italian cars, right? Um, and I think that was what I kind of took away from it. I mean, my kids were just going bonkers, want nothing to do with all these cars. They were like, "Oh, cool, let's go somewhere else and get some treats." Um, but I looked at some of these, like I saw the only vehicle that I thought was kind of cool. There was an 812 Superfast that I was like, all right, that's a neat car, but it was the
Mm.
worst color combination I'd ever seen, and all these stickers on it, and I'm like, what is happening here?
Yeah.
Whereas if I went and saw some really cool vehicles you don't see very often, I'm like, okay, that I
Yes.
respect that. You've done a little bit of research. You
I
got
mean,
some good
that's why
taste.
Radwood is so fun is because you see some of the stuff you expect to see, and then every now and then something comes out, you're like, what
Yeah,
is that?
yeah. Which I would love to go to Radwood. It looks like
Yeah,
way too much
they
fun.
should do like a BC version. They're about to do a UK one, so I mean, yeah, which
Oh,
they've
are
done
they?
in the past.
Oh, maybe I have to
They've
start
done it in
talking
the
to someone.
past, but I think it's their first year back since COVID. I think, which only makes sense.
I think the problem with Vancouver is just finding the space. It hasn't
They
been
would have to go
developed,
outside,
so
I
it's
think, a bit. Yeah, like go
right.
north or something. What is
Yeah.
what's the if what's I don't know if you have this in your head. What's the number one vehicle you're sad that you'll definitely never be able to drive because
That'll
of
never be
size?
able to
With
drive just
size,
because of size.
not because of financially, because
Yeah,
that
yeah,
list is long.
yeah. That would make yes, exactly. Um, and the problem is like a lot of these supercars that I would love to just drive, but I know I can't. I
Right.
probably cannot fit in them. There was like even like some of the older generation
Mm.
911 turbos. Like even like the old 911 turbo with the whale tail. I in the 80s. I like. There's
No.
no way I can fit in them. There's no
Mm.
possible room. No, it's not a. Things like that where I just know that I'm never gonna get a chance to burn around. I mean, one, I'm never gonna get a chance to have someone go, "Hey, here, take my car for a
You
rip."
never know.
Um,
You never
you
know.
never know. For some reason, the old like the Lotus Elise and things like that, I thought were such a cool car, but
No, no,
there's no
those
chance. I'm
are
like,
yeah, those are hard nose. I think. Yeah.
you know, and I just think they're such neat cars. I love the whole sort of the idea and what Colin Chapman's sort of ethos has been with getting, whereas everyone's going, let's just throw horsepower on it and all-wheel drive, and it's heavier and heavier and heavier. I love the sort of let's get
Yeah.
down to the bare bones, make it light,
Absolutely.
put a good motor and
Yes,
tranny, and go have
yes, I
fun.
agree. Now, we talked about this in the past, and I don't know how far along your idea has progressed at all, if you've had time to even think about it, but you would love to do more with cars on a general basis. And how do you see that in between your projects? What do you want to do?
And I think that's you hit the nail right on the head. My problem is every single time I'm right about to get the camera equipment going and start you know checking out cars and reviewing cars sort of from the world of someone who's taller and has a family, then all of a sudden acting, my real career, it takes over, and it's like I keep wanting to do more with cars, and I think it might just have to be the aspect of going, all right, just do it, just start putting stuff, get the YouTube channel, start just anything that I find is neat and cool. Maybe there's an audience for it. But I've loved cars, and I've loved the accessibility to freedom that they afford since I was a kid. I loved dirt bikes growing up and motorcycles, and then it turned into, hey, you're old enough to drive, let's get into
Yep.
cars, and it's been that way. But I think just sort of reviewing cars, and I think also it's a bit of a selfish play. I just sort of realized that reviewing the cars just gives me the opportunity to
Yeah.
drive lots of
I
different
mean,
cars.
I
And instead of just like
right.
trading in vehicles and getting a new lease, and my wife going like,
Right.
what are
No,
you
no, that makes.
doing?"
I mean, that's why I started doing it. That's why I still like doing it for sure. All
Right.
driving all the different things. Now you mentioned this was actually one of my questions. Do you ever want to transition to more behind the camera stuff as your career progresses, or balance it?
I think, yeah, I mean, when it comes to this industry and the film industry and being my size, and not necessarily just being my size, but if you're in the film industry, it really, to just be a very successful actor and that's all you do, that is it. It's a very tough world. I've been successful, but there's not a lot of
Sure.
consistency. Um, and you kind of have to wear multiple hats. I get the pleasure of playing around in the stunt world. I've made a really good career, and I've made some amazing contacts, and people give me the opportunity to do that, and I love it because it brings back the sort of the sport team aspect that I
Right.
grew up with. And but then I'm also starting to lean like, hey, do I want to start learning about
Mm.
producing? Do I ever want to direct? maybe there's a place, because I am noticing that I'm referring to scenes and movies and films and various things, especially talking on the producer side with people, and they're like, "Oh wow, you explained that completely to me like a director," and I'm like,
Interesting.
oh, I didn't really think about it. But I never want to be that person who goes into something uh, with unprepared. I don't want to go in to be a director and not have any clue what I'm doing and just rely on my ADs and my DOPs to be like, hey,
Right.
just
Hey,
carry me
Mr.
through
Cudmore,
this.
what lens would you
Like
like here?
I
You're like,
need
I
to
don't
know.
fucking know. 50?
I mean, I was going to pick
Right,
something, but
right.
what do you think?
I know what I would use, but
You
what
know?
would you use? Same.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah. It's a bit of yeah,
that's why I
very
hired
minds
you.
think alike. But I think it would be interesting. I think directing would be fantastic. I think I would bring, as a lot of actors who transition to directing, you can really bring that element of talking and communicating to the actors of what you need
Yeah,
because
I
you've
mean,
been
what's his
there.
name? The dude
Um,
who directs the Wick films has made it a career now. He was the
totally.
stuntman on a bunch of shit.
Yep.
Stuntman,
Yep.
I forget his name.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tahowski. And yeah. And so having that element of knowing how to communicate what you want,
Hmm.
especially to performers, is fantastic. Now, the trick I would imagine would be coming into the other side and trying to get across to behind the camera crew of what you're trying to achieve. And so I think that's the sort of steep learning curve of trying to figure out, okay, I know how to talk to the performers. I know how to get what I want out of my performers. How can I do that
Sure.
behind the camera now?
As your career has progressed, and you've been at this game for a while, has your approach to I'm asking not just car stuff because I think this podcast is more interesting when it's not just car stuff. Has your approach to
Sure.
auditioning changed as your career has progressed?
100%. It always has. I mean, it always has to, right? It's the same. It's the same. I mean, auditioning is
Hmm.
just job interviews in a way, right? It's you're just basically having a job interview. And so I think when you do so many of them, you just start to realize that you don't necessarily need to waste time, and you don't need to. And I think it's also the maturity of getting older and realizing you're not there to sort of like sing and dance on the spot and try to please your aunt who's,
Right.
please get me the job. And I think so a lot of it kind of comes in this sort of comfortableness of being in your own skin, and realizing that not hearing anything or getting a no isn't necessarily it's not a dig on you as a person or a performer. It's just the fact that you just
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
fit the bill for this one. And then I think also I think I used to waste so much time over
Mm.
preparing for things to the point where they became robotic for fear
Yeah.
that I might fail. And that I think has changed because and I think fail is such a wrong word because fail is not the right word. It's just learn. Because if you do something that sort of views as fail, then you're hard on yourself saying, well, I'm terrible at this. Whereas you just say, it didn't work,
Yeah.
but what did I learn? I got a chance. And so I think that has sort of changed because of the skin gets thicker and realizing that at the beginning of your career, you're just like, oh, please, I just want to make sure
Yes.
everyone's happy
Yes.
and loves me. And then you go to a point where you're like, well, I know what I'm doing. If you don't like me for this, maybe you'll like me
That
for
is a
something
good
else.
transitional mindset. Yes. Yes.
Totally. And that's also, I mean, that's also the listening, right? Like when you're young, you just don't listen. You
Right.
think you do, but you're not listening, right? Because you can't. I think that was the other big thing was dead air, right? Individuals don't really like dead air, right? When you're talking with someone, if it all of a sudden gets quiet, you try
Yes.
to fill it with something because it becomes uncomfortable, and that's similar to the audition process, especially in the room. You just want to fill it with things, and then you're not actually listening to what the
Yeah,
other person
that's
is saying.
actually applicable to what I do here, or if I'm interviewing somebody for something car related, where the I had questions in my head, especially when I worked on the classic car show I did years ago that didn't really go anywhere. When we're talking to car owners and stuff like that,
Right.
I was thinking about my next question, not listening to the answer of the
Mm-hmm.
current question I just asked. And that would happen in the podcast too, where you don't have to just follow the script or the outline, because the question that they answer, the way they answer it, could lead you down a different, more interesting path. And I'm assuming in the audition process, if you take something somewhere and someone responds in a certain way, rather than you just being like, all right, I got to get to this next line, well, why don't we just see where this character goes a little bit, or trust in yourself in the process. And it's interesting how that can apply in so many, not just creative, but just in general in business and in interpersonal relationships. Just listen rather than fill the space, like you just said. That's good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're right. You hit the nail on the head. It works for it applies in so many different situations and scenarios. But that's the biggest one, is listening, because when you're, even as a performer, when you get on set and you notice the young performers come in, they've prepped that scene left and right, top to bottom. But they prepped it so much that there's no pliability to that scene. And you prep it only the way you see it. And so you don't know what the other performer is going to do. And they could go somewhere totally different. But you have to be able to have that ability to just follow them. And then it becomes that dance. But if you are trying to dance and you've got your own steps in your head and the other person has their own steps and you're not trying to work with each other, then it just becomes something weird.
Yeah, you're at two different levels, right? And they're like, oh, I'm doing it this way, and you're doing it this way, and everybody's like,
yeah,
what the you guys aren't acting, you're just reading.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what it becomes. I mean, no conversation, right? You can't. I'm not going to have a conversation with you with a preconceived idea of exactly how I'm going to have that conversation, because that conversation is going to change all the time. Some thought just pops into your head, and then it goes off in another direction.
I got a couple questions here, a couple from Twitter and a couple from Instagram. We'll start with just a couple of Twitter ones. Dan Mosqueda asks, what is a car you'd love to own but just can't comfortably fit in? Which we all kind of covered, but I mean, Porsche's on the list. And
yeah, Porsche's on the list. The newer Porsches are bigger, so I fit in them. It's going to be tricky to daily drive one of those things. I would do it. But again, I'm not gonna go out and buy a Porsche in this current market. Not, and especially not with my. If you get on a Top Gun movie, I'm jumping on a Porsche. But I'd actually, you know what? It's funny because the life sort of changes, right? You get to this place where you got wife and kids, and you're like, I'd rather have a nice house. And then eventually I'll put something in the garage.
And yes, that's why I have a house and an old cheap Jaguar.
But it fills the void of what you want, like having something fun to play with, right? But houses are bonkers. I know there are everywhere,
yes,
but we're crazy up here.
We talked about that last time. Yeah. You and I, not on the podcast, but separately. Bobby Reed has a question. What will be the next car brand to be defunct? Do you guys have any brands that we don't have? I don't think you have any brands. No. You have models.
No.
There's some models that are different,
right?
But that's it.
Sure, I would, yeah, maybe just a name, but certain things. I know that at certain points, certain things would have come to the Canadian market, but they haven't gone down south. But no, we don't have any other brands. No, in Europe you've got, but even like the brands that you have in Europe, they're all sort of owned by.
If I had to pick one
anyway,
to go to be defunct of the existing brands, I'd have to go with Buick because. Not to dump on
Buick,
any brand,
Pontiac.
But I don't see anything interesting coming
Pontiac's
from them.
Gone.
So.
Buick's still happening. I've never understood Buick.
Now let's see. Some Instagram questions. Here's a couple specific to you, which you do not have to answer if you do not want to. Paul Sentia Gulguin asks, what does Daniel do to have such a great body? Yeah.
And my kids eat all my food.
Nice. That's perfect. Oh, and another question from the same person. Did you like being Colossus?
I loved being Colossus. Yeah, I mean, it was a blessing and a curse at the same time because I got such a big role in such a large universe right at the beginning of my career. And so it's one of those sort of like sink or swim thrown into the lion's den type deals. I loved that character. I always wanted to grow that character to sort of respect what the character had been written and created in the stories and the Marvel Universe. I mean, there was so much more to him, and there's so much more opportunity to sort of grow. But the tough thing about being in such a large franchise is you're on the bottom of the totem pole, and when it comes to that, you only have a small amount of sort of scenes and dialogue and things to do with the script, and so It's always tricky when you're really excited about it, and then you realize, wow,
Mhm.
it's not really. This isn't my story. This is all the lead story. And then it kind of went away, and then it went into the world of Deadpool, and they changed that character to sort of see how the director wanted to see him, and then
Yeah.
they kind of made him the fall guy. And I was like,
Right.
all right, well, that's not my world.
Yeah, I hear you there.
You guys do your thing. But yeah, I'd love to. You know, there's no way I would ever. I'm sure there's no way I'd be asked back because now it's so diverted so differently.
Sure.
But if
Okay.
they did, I'd love to play properly.
Someone Mika Freak asks, "What is your favorite behind the scenes of Twilight that you did?" Now we're digging. Now we're digging deep.
Oh yeah, this is getting right back in. I think the favorite thing behind the
There you
scenes was
go.
being in Italy. When we shot New Moon, we were in this small town in Tuscany, Montepulciano, and there was so we the main cast. There was this beautiful olive farm owned by this family who was like the second largest pasta sauce maker in all of Italy. And so they had this sort of like Airbnb type place. And it was run by this grandson who we called Italian Batman because he had
Wow.
cars in this underground garage with a pool over top and a huge wine cellar. And he was like in his 30s and he just basically lived life. His name's Alberto. And we stayed, some of the lesser cast, we stayed at a hotel like down the road, but we only had to shoot 2 days and we were there for a week. So Charlie Bewley and myself just basically went there every day. And his grandmother was in the kitchen all day just making the most amazing Italian food. And we just basically sat by the pool, swam in the pool, drank his wine because he kept just feeding it to us, eating this amazing Italian food, and then, you know, getting half cut and driving around on the grounds in an old
That's
Fiat
awesome.
500 with my head out
That
of the
sounds,
roof.
and that's also, I
So it
mean, that
was,
region is
yeah,
where some of my favorite wine on the planet is from. Brunello is like some of the
yes,
best wine. I remember years ago, I
yeah,
was in New York for the launch of the Lexus RCF, and it wasn't far from Matt Farah's house from the Smoking
hmm
Tire. He was there for the launch, but he stayed at his parents' house, and he was there with Thad, who was one of his main camera guys who now lives in Dubai. So Matt's like, oh, after the dinner, come back to my parents' house. So we went back to his parents' house. I think his dad doesn't really drink, but his dad, Matt's dad, Farah's dad is an important person, so people give him wine, and he had tons of Brunello. So Thad and I
okay,
were
yeah.
just going, we were downing bottles of really good Brunello, and the next morning I had to fly home, and it was like,
Oh, tough
oh
life.
my god, just
How did you feel?
dead.
Just
But I
totally,
love
just dead
Brunello
to the
is like
world.
some of the best Italian wine. Oh, that is
It's amazing. I love Italy. I love the culture. The wine is amazing. I love sort of, uh, I could spend a lot of time in that
yes.
sort of region of Europe,
Mm.
you know, south of France, Italy, Greece, Croatia, all just right down the coastline. Maybe pop
Oh
up
yeah,
into
that's
Portugal and
yes,
Spain.
agree. Um, Daniel Roberto Dureros asks, do you have any go-tos while testing a press car stereo? Believe it or not, one of my favorite songs to test a stereo, and I don't hate the Eagles like everybody hates the Eagles. Um, there's, yeah, I think because
I
of
didn't
Big
know everybody
Lebowski,
hates the
because
Eagles.
everybody hates the Eagles. But
Okay, fair enough.
they released they were one of the first ones to play with like Laserdisc or Dolby True Surround or something like that. So their when Hell Freezes Over tour or Hell Freezes Over, whatever, because they said they would never come back together unless Hell froze over. So Hell Freezes Over was the name of the album. But the live version
Right.
of Hotel California from that is just so crisp and clean and clear that, and I have it in FLAC audio file, which is like the lossless audio file. I'll test that often, and then I'll also test
hmm
a lot of Pearl Jam and Run the Jewels and Rage just to mix things up. But for just fidelity purposes, I do have a go-to, and it is that version of Hotel California. So there you go.
Interesting.
CDNMR2V6 asks, what is your favorite place to drive in or around Vancouver?
It's always been the Sea to Sky Highway, basically the highway that goes from Vancouver to Squamish to Whistler. I grew up in Squamish, so 45 minutes up the road, depends how you drive.
Because it's a low speed
I
limit.
yeah, I love that. It is not, yeah, not fast, 80 kilometers an hour, but in some sections 100. don't think it was 120, but I've driven that highway pre-Olympics when it was like one of the most dangerous highways in North America, and I used to drive that very fast. And then I used to drive it even faster on my sport bike. I used to love summer night riding when the road was still really hot because you could see the oncoming lights,
wow.
so you could kind of cheat corners. But then driving up to the Okanagan, so driving east, is just absolutely stunning. There's a ton of great roads around here. But the downside is our speed limits are paltry.
Yeah.
And
I've
there's
driven
always a
to
cop
Whistler from Vancouver, and the road, like you said, amazing. And then the road on, when we did the SQ5 launch, the road on that island where you go up to there's like a beachy, surfy fishing town near the top. Yeah, to
Tofino,
Tofino.
Ucluelet.
Stayed at some
Yeah.
just crazy awesome hotel there where I'm eating breakfast. I'm the only one in the restaurant in the morning, and I look out in this little harbor, and there's just a whale feeding. And the sir, I'm like, is that a whale?
Right.
The server's like, yes, sir. Can I get you some binoculars to view it? I was like, this is fucking insane.
Yeah.
It was so cool.
Good old
It was
Audi
Audi
Canada,
US.
spending all that money on press
It was
releases,
Audi
not
US
rear
doing their
exhaust
launch
pipes.
up there, but yeah,
The money goes in real exhaust pipes.
it was awesome. The road was incredible, and I saw no cops, which was very helpful. And we flew up there. It was awesome. So good. Um, the,
Sounds great.
yeah,
Hey, Audi
there you go.
America, sign me up. I'll come
Uh,
for you. Come for a drive. After I just dogged all
they
your design
understand
cues.
the parts we make fun of. Can you feel the Porsche in a Macan,
Yeah.
or does it feel like any other crossover? Have you driven a Macan?
No, and I kind of wanted one for a while there, but then I also feel like, well, this sounds very. No, I'm not even going to say what I was about to say. But I feel like the Macans, their sort of thing is from the outside looking in, not having driven one. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's the closest thing to an 911,"
Yeah,
and I'm like,
yeah.
"Just get an older 911."
I haven't driven a Macan, but I know I'm like 90% sure they use different all-wheel drive systems, where the Macan system is a sportier all-wheel drive system compared to what the Audis use. So I think that would be a pretty big difference. Because
Right.
I'll tell you, like
Yeah.
Porsche wagons, even the electric wagons drive amazingly. So I would have to imagine the Macan just drives like a taller,
Yeah.
I don't want to say 911, but
Right. That Taycan
it's the
Sport
best.
Turismo GTS. Oh my
If I could
God, I
afford
want
it as my daily driver, my dream garage would be like that as the daily, and then a lightly modified Land Rover 130, the older 130 Defender, not the new 3-row they're coming out with. That
Right. Yeah, I still kick
you had a
myself for
90?
getting rid of my 90. I had a 90. I had what was sold to me, and I didn't do enough due diligence. What was sold to me was a North American model 90. I had a 97 with the automatic. But it was a gray market offshoot, I think it was sent to maybe Dubai or something like that, and brought in. So they kind of sold it to me one way, and I'm like, you guys sold and basically made me pay way too much money for something that wasn't the right.
Oh,
And so I had them buy it back off me. And I shouldn't have. It only had 38,000
was
kilometers
it
on it or something like that. So,
was it
like
up there or down
16,
here? Okay,
it
all
was
right.
hard
Because down here, if you
up
bought,
here.
you could have got into trouble at the time, depending on what year it was. If it was a non NAS.
Oh, right.
I don't know. I don't think it's as tricky anymore now. I think they're fine, but there was a time period where somebody might have been upset that car was here, because you guys have 15-year
Yeah.
rolling or something, and it's
Yeah, we have 15. Yeah, we have 15 year. And then I got rid of mine, and then my brother, living in Europe, still selling the Defender. He got a Defender, brand new 130, all
it's like
done
a
up,
dream
and I was
truck
like,
of mine.
yeah, you're killing me.
Yeah, because your older brother
It's
is in
such a
France,
cool
right?
truck. He was, yeah. You know what? The funny thing is, he hated it. The thing, reliability wise, was disgusting. He said he just he had it for a
terrible.
while, and he just told him
Yep.
to take it back. He was so
I would
tired.
still rock
He
it.
was so
I
tired
know
of it.
what I'm getting into, so I would appreciate it. So what's
Yes.
next? What's your next project?
I did a romantic comedy with Shannon Elizabeth from the sort of world of American Pie, and I did that a few months ago. So I'm not sure when that one's going to come out. And I worked on a TV show called Kung Fu, which is all done for the season. There's a few episodes of that, and now it's just, unfortunately, we went through 2.5 months of the Directors Guild up here was on strike, so nothing new was happening, and everybody in the film industry is now twiddling their fingers, going, I really want the work to come back. But it's now picking up, so now it's the game of throwing 100 auditions out there, and hoping that one
I didn't know you were in I don't know how many episodes, but it was Superman and Lois, because that shoots up near you, and
Yep.
Because I got to get Eric Valdez on the
shoots in Vancouver.
podcast, who is on that show, who's also a car guy.
Yep, he was. I think he sort of reached out, and we were chatting via Instagram about being car nuts.
I've chatted with Eric a few times. He's a really nice guy. Which is funny, and he's not in Canada at the moment because they bought an Airstream van and they're like touring the country or something like that. Yeah. Where can people find you on social media if you want them to?
Well, they can find me on Instagram.
Oh,
right now, I'm locked out of Twitter because I have no idea what the email was, what I signed up with. I can't find or recover my password. And so I'm completely locked out. But at Daniel Cudmore at Twitter, and at Daniel Cudmore or Facebook. But yeah, I'm not the best at social media.
Though?
I know I got to get better. But
right.
That's the thing. I won't put my kids on. It's just not. I don't like the world. I don't like not knowing who's looking at photos. So I try not to put my kids on there. It's really about work and me being an idiot and doing stupid things, and then cars. Like it's just But I know a lot of people in the film industry are a lot more professional about it.
A lot of those people
time,
probably
it becomes a full-time job. I just don't. Yeah, this is very true. Or they don't have kids, so they just basically
like I have a
more
team.
time than I know what to do with. But exactly.
So if everybody watching and listening at Daniel Cudmore, give him a follow if you aren't already, and then keep an eye out because when he gets a little bit of free time, there might be some car content rolling out, which could be very interesting. And I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, what's going to be very interesting is going to see the comments from yourself on how green and terrible my first videos are. And I expect it.
On the flip side, I'll record an audition tape so you can see how shitty that would be. To be or not to be,
Perfect.
I'll do an accent and everything.
Yeah, amazing. Yes.
That'd be fucking great.
Yeah.
You go right into it. We're Tennessee. I don't know what I listen to the Always Sunny podcast, and it's funny because one of the main three is like Juilliard trained, and it comes up every now and then. It's really funny. Like, what's the Tennessee Williams? Is that like popular play? Yeah, so it's funny to hear those guys talk about that shit. But Mr. Cudmore, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time. We will get you on again soon, especially if you start popping out some of this car stuff. And even if not, it's always fun to talk to. And then, as always, when you're down in LA anytime in the near future or the distant future, let me know because we're overdue for some beverages. I will do the same if I'm up your way because I'd like to be up there and say hi to our mutual friend, Brendan McAleer, as well. And Eric Valdez, if he's up there shooting, if the show's running again. I think they are. Yes.
There we go. I think they're going another season.
Appreciate it. Everybody give them a like and a follow and all that good stuff. And we'll see the rest of you soon. Bye.